Once upon a time, the infamous rover Reynardo plundered the floating isles. Then his mother called him to her deathbed. "Swear to me that you won't die on the gallows," she rasped. Reluctantly, he swore. And he whiled away his days at home with music, cards, and wine. But the Emperor had changed. He'd been good once, a shy, almost humble toad. He'd built universities. But then people started whispering about mass graves in the woods, midnight rituals, victims screaming. The Imperial Ravens would round up entire villages, and no one ever returned. The Ravens had come to Ubar scouting for ancient books said to be of great power. But the librarians had hidden the books, so they'd burnt the librarians. The citizens, outraged, had driven them off. The Ravens had come back with dropships. The kid had fled with one of those books. He was brave and dumb and wanted to join the rebellion. And Reynardo had promised his mother he'd protect him. The kid was looking down, watching his city burn. "Sorry, kid," Reynardo told the kid. "Look, if we give them the book, they'll leave you alone." "My mother died for this book!" "I promised her I'd protect you." "Oh, damn it." The kid had run off. With the book, of course. So Reynardo had to run after him. The two Ravens were staring at the kid like he was their dinner, which probably was what was in their tiny brains. "Hey," Reynardo said. They cocked their heads at him. "Pick on someone as ugly as you." Wait, that didn't come out right. "For the Emperor!" The Ravens cawed and rushed at him. A dropship flew overhead. He hoped they hadn't noticed him. The kid. Oh, right. The Gate of Heroes. Someone's idea of a joke, making the skyship docks a gated community. You needed a hero's sword to open it. And the kid was on the other side of the gate. "Who let you through? Promise me you'll take the book to the rebels, or I'm gonna steal your ship." "I'm not taking that damn book anywhere, and neither are you." "Try and stop me," laughed the kid. "I bet you don't even have a hero's sword." And with that, the kid hopped away. Had to hand it to the kid. He was an idiot, but he had guts. Where was Reynardo going to get a hero sword? Ore and wind essence? Perfect. A hero sword. QED. This is what he got for settling down and finding people to care about. The kid's mum had been a swell cook, and she'd laughed at Renado's jokes, even when he didn't know he'd made one. And the ravens had come to burn her. And she'd made him promise to protect the kid. But she never told him where the book was, just the kid. He came up to a ledge. It was too far to jump. There'd been a bridge here before, hadn't there? And there was Peter, giggling at him. "How'd you get across?" he asked the kid. "Where'd you find a hook?" "I hopped," said the kid. Wise-ass kid. "Hey, look out behind you!" "Cute," said Renato. Ah, ravens. Time to talk some sense into the kid. Just hook his way across the ledge and chase the kid down. Thing was, he hadn't used his hook since he'd retired. Damn it. Maybe if he meditated at that altar there, he'd remember his old skills. It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. And there was the Farfarer. She was the fastest ship he'd ever known. She could do the Kestra run in 12 furlongs. Oh, so the salesman had told him. And something told him the kid was about to walk into an ambush. "Stop!" he shouted. "I'm not giving you the book!" shouted the kid, and took off. "No! Peter!" But the kid ran for it, and a goggler nailed him with its eyeball. The book was unburned. Next to it were the buckles from the kid's shoes, and a kid-sized pile of ashes. Damn it. Why hadn't he lied and told the kid he'd take the book to the rebels? The kid would be alive now. Really pissed off and betrayed, but alive. Oh, damn it. Renato picked up the book. He couldn't let the Empire have it now. He was going to have to get it out of there. He'd be a wanted man. Probably have to join the rebellion just to have a place to dock. Well, he'd hated home life anyway. What was the deal about this book anyway? Maybe he should open it and find out. All that had been years ago. How many? The war was a blur, and now 3 Raven scout ships were chasing him. "Where are you running, rebel?" cawed the Raven captain over the loud hailer. Renato could see them cranking up their catapults. "Just going out for milk?" Renato yelled back. "Where can you run?" laughed the Raven horribly. Far behind him, another city was burning. The dark cloud above its island was thousands of Imperial ships. The fleet was doing a thorough job. "Take us to the rebel base, and we'll spare your life!" it cawed. The entire jury-rigged rebel fleet was only a few islands to the east. Beyond that were only the pillars of heaven, a sea of endless blood-colored tornadoes. The rebellion was out of time, unless Renato could bring a game-changer. Maybe he could. Reynardo had found out where he could find the pieces of the Sky Ripper, the legendary weapon that had exiled the lost gods. Surely a legendary weapon could win the final battle. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino had sent Reynardo a desperate message saying he had a brilliant scheme to save the rebellion. If Reynardo could only rescue him. Reynardo dived the Farfarer towards the abyss. As he felt the heat of the jet stream, the Raven ships peeled off, not stable enough to follow him down there. Now it was time to choose. Lapino or the Sky Ripper? Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? There was a sign. Take the goat across first. The Ravens had taken the town. Reynardo had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Reynardo hoped the people were just hiding. Reynardo's blood was up. He just needed to smash something. Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Reynardo. No? Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lapino. Where had the Mad Rabbit got to? Renato felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school. It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. Renato felt a chill run down his back. Or possibly a flea. Missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like it was at a reunion. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu School. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew. But she'd never told him who she really was. She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy. She won't give them up easily. She'll tell the interrogators, all right, said Lapino. Taking her would change the game, all right. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. was new. Most people still use doorknobs. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lapino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lapino dressing as an old blind toad, and Reynardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Reynardo. Oh, this is gonna be fun, said Lapino, as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. Reynardo felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Lapino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Reynardo jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat. Reynardo, she said, are those new scars? They look good on you. You never returned my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Ah, what does an imperial princess know about style? Oh, get a room, you two, said Lapino. But the fleet was coming on fast, so they put Zenobia on the Farfarer and took her east over the Nexus. She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying goodbye, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Ah, Lapino was right, Reynardo thought reluctantly. She knows things. She recognized his look. You're taking me to the interrogators, aren't you? She said, wide-eyed. And then she jumped, with horror. Reynardo saw Zenobia plummeting. Then he saw the Nexus below them. Cats always land on their feet. Ah, she'll head for the Imperial outpost, yelled Lapino. You have to catch her. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. If he ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase. Who needed bridges anyway? He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What did they do to her? Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe he could talk to her. But, after all, there were worse things the Imperials had done to friends of his. really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought. Renato reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. When she realized he was already in front of her, she didn't even try to run. Oh, you left without saying goodbye. Again, he said, "Please, I'm enjoying this a little too much," she said, shaken. "Oh, spare us the chit-chat, would you?" said Lapino as he shackled her hands so she couldn't throw spells. She knows all his plans. All the way back to the Farfarer, Lapino nagged Renato about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia. How that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebel secret base. Renato didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her? Pulled away from the Nexus, Renato could see the fear in Zenobia's eyes. "I can't take her to those creatures at the base," he whispered to Lapino. "Ah, you've gone soft. Soft in the head. We captured her for what she knows. I'll take her to the mountains. Tell all the horrible things the Emperor's done. Yeah, believe me, she'll turn." And he turned the wheel. "The hell you will!" shouted Lapino, and he grabbed the wheel back from him. The two of them wrestled for control of the ship. It shot off like a mad sparrow. Suddenly, Renato was falling. When he came to, Zenobia was standing over him. "Why didn't you take me to the base to be interrogated?" she demanded. "Do you know what's left of people they interrogate? This is some trick, isn't it? To make me fall for you again. Well, I won't." "Oh, go on then. Scurry back to your ravens. I can't stop you." But strangely, she didn't. As Renato set off to find the Farfarer, she followed him, keeping just out of sight of the ravens. If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. I? Newly remembered knowledge. He needed to focus. As Renato stopped to sniff the wind, Zenobia came up, still mad. Did you really think you'd just talk me into betraying my father? Oh yeah, sure, that was exactly my plan. Then why aren't you even talking to me? Because I've never talked you into anything in my life. They're gonna court-martial you for letting me go. He caught a whiff of the Farfarer. Wet rope, tar, and a cask of Scobel ale he'd spilt last year. It was that way. Renato wondered if he should have taken Zenobia to the rebel base for real. Maybe she wasn't playing him after all. After the bleak talk about the Emperor's dark secrets, he was regretting his suspicions. Don't look down, he thought. Sure enough, the Farfarer had crashed in some rocks. There was no sign of Lupino. Zenobia caught up. All that kid stuff in Swordfu School. Look, that's the past. We're adults now. We have duties to other people. We have destinies. What are you talking about? And you are the most arrogant, slow-witted, light-fingered, mercenary, immoral, reckless... Run away with me, said Renato, and he realized he meant it. What? Just like that? She demanded. I will, if you will. So she kissed him. And it was the best kiss he'd ever had. They held hands as they boarded the Farfarer. Renato felt light-hearted, like the winds that were playing the rigging like a balalaika. But Lupino, I need to get back to Lupino, he said, suddenly realizing he could have been captured. A prisoner. He's not. How'd you know? He saw something in her eyes he didn't understand. He fell, didn't he? Into the abyss. She looked away, wouldn't answer. But then a bolt smashed through the Farfarer's keel. The broken ship plummeted out of the clouds. Renato picked himself off the deck. They were alive. "We have to get to my private ship," she said. "Do you trust me?" "I guess I must," he said. "You go on ahead. Clear the path," she said. "I can't kill my own soldiers." He wanted to say that he didn't trust her, that he had no idea what he was getting into. But he had no choice, did he? He was following his heart. That's what it means to be a hero. You had to follow your heart. Cool. Wish I could do that. It wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable. Renato wondered idly if people who built these poles had really, really long tentacles. This was much easier than free climbing. Paused to catch their breath. It was strange to be so close to her. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm trying very hard not to think." "Me too," he said. Up ahead, he could see the thin silver of Zenobia's personal ship. It looked fast. They would leave all this behind. So much. It was time to turn it into something he could use. As they reached her ship, Renato suddenly felt a sharp pain in his stomach. He was surprised to see a crossbow bolt sticking out of it. "I was going to lead the Empire to a secret base," said Lapino. "But no, you had to screw up my plan because you still got a thing for her." Renato stared at Zenobia. The kiss, was it real? She said, with a look of indescribable sorrow. She gestured and said an arcane word, and Lapino went flying into the abyss, screaming, I'm telling your father! Then she knelt down to cradle his head, and her paws felt very soft and warm. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. Lapino was a traitor. Renato had suspected there was something wrong with the Mad Rabbit. But now he knew there was malice behind his goofiness. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato.
Say goodnight, Gracie, said Renato, wondering who Gracie was.
The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the Lost Gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. Every day he was getting better and better. Renato had been to a dungeon once where all the chests had teeth and eyes. It had been a short visit. You blinked. Ah, a puzzle.
Renardo loved puzzles. Except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good. What was the point of this gate? Did they think no one would notice the lever? If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger. Making a dent in those shields. Oh, sweet! A gem. All he needed now was a workbench, and he could slot it into his gauntlet. That had been his mistake before, trusting his old friend Lapino, who had been through so many battles with him and shed so many heartaches, who he'd rescued so many times. What was up with that guy anyway? There it was. Sky Ripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Sky Ripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him.
It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good, no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core. He looked up at the old trees around him. They were so big and so old. They'd been there before he was born, and they'd be there after he'd passed into legend. Was he confronting his own unimportance? What had got into him? He was no philosopher. Anyway, who cares? He was plenty important. He was a hero, and soon he'd prove it. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Where does that go to? There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked.
He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest. The mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry, too. This was an unhealthy place to be. The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark art, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. Maybe Lapino wasn't such a good friend. Yeah, that made him feel better. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now, he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Renato had never been much of a student. At Swordfu school, he'd never read the books, just looked at the pictures. And Zenobia. But weapons he understood. His gut told him that the Skyripper would work great. He would use it to take out the Imperial outpost. And what's the worst that could happen? The thing wouldn't work, and then he'd take it to the scientists. Right? Exactly. As he set out down the path, Renato wondered why the parts of the Skyripper had only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had discarded it. This Emperor, Isengrim III, had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Perhaps that was bringing up lost artifacts. How perfect, then, that the Skyripper would reappear to be his destruction. What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods?
Chest full of old banana peels. There had to be more. There was.
knew more than he ever had. But about what? Renata felt a little better. He was tired of slaughtering ravens. Maybe it was time to test out the new weapon. He turned a knob on the Sky Ripper. It made strange, mechanical noises. The wheels spun faster. It began to hum. The Sky Ripper was following his every step. At least it acknowledged him as the master. But there was no trigger. How was he supposed to fire it? Fire, he said. Nothing happened. Well, maybe it just needed to warm up. After all, it hadn't been fired in thousands of years. Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling. The Sky Ripper was making a whining noise now, and its wheels were spinning so fast he could no longer see them. Renato had a thought. "Please?" he asked. The Sky Ripper began to glow. Boom! The outpost burst into flame. Ravens flapped out screaming, wings on fire. The base was his. The far speaker toad came hopping out. "Renato!" It croaked, sounding like a toad version of Zenobia.
"Don't use the Sky Ripper. It will destroy the world."
"Yeah, sure it will," cracked Renato. "Pull the other one."
"If you don't trust me, go see Calaveras."
That sounded sensible. Why did she always have to sound sensible all the time? Oh, it was infuriating. Of course she would say that. He was supposed to hurry and bring the Sky Ripper to the council so the rebels could actually win the war. But what if she was right? Damn it. Zenobia was so frustrating. If she couldn't get you with magic, she'd get you with reason and caution and sensible arguments. Of course, Calaveras, he might not know the latest scientific theories with evidence and all, but Renato preferred the knowledge in the old books anyway. What they said felt true, and that's what's important. He should be careful, though. She'd probably guess he'd come here. That meant she'd probably set an ambush for him. Renato landed on the island, expecting Zenobia's ambush at any moment. On the other hand, there did seem to be a lot of ravens around here. Were they just lost patrols stirring up trouble? Were they looking for him? If she was going to ambush him, wouldn't she keep the road clear so he wouldn't be on his guard? Or, unless they were part of the ambush, the obvious reasons he was meant to see to take his mind off the ones he wouldn't see. God, after all these years, she still drove him crazy. Think of all the artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. Zenobia's ambush never materialized. Could she be sincere? Calaveras was a great scholar. Renato doubted even Zenobia could convince him to say something he didn't believe. And if he was working for the Empire, he'd never have told Renato about the Sky Ripper in the first place. Well, he would listen to the wise old toad, but that didn't mean he had to agree. Renato wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles. Renato remembered when the government had introduced the healing fruit. Some people said it was going to bankrupt the economy, but it seemed to work very well. Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs. Why? Why did he listen to Zenobia? She was the enemy. Of course she didn't want him to use his shiny new weapon. The thing was, though, she was appallingly honest. I mean, she wouldn't lie even to an enemy. At least she'd never lied to him. So if she said he had to see Calaveras, it probably was a good idea to see him. Ugh, it was infuriating. dodgy spheres. Easy to dodge, but boy do they sting if you didn't pay attention. Calaveras examined the Sky Ripper eagerly.
What? How often does a new relic surface?
He brushed off Zenobia's warning.
Oh, what does sorceresses know about physics?
However, he did know a few ways to make the weapon even more precise and more powerful, and quickly went off to tinker. Soon the Sky Ripper no longer whined, but thrummed like a hummingbird taking off. It was ready for war. And so, Reynardo thanked Calaveras and took the legendary weapon to the final battle. But where were the other rebel ships? Had something happened? He could defeat the Imperial fleet with a Sky Ripper, but he couldn't govern. He was not cut out to be Emperor, and he'd no desire to be one. There were a few rebel ships here and there, but there was no organization to the battle. Where was the Council flagship? Something had gone terribly wrong. But he had the Sky Ripper, and the Ravens had nowhere they could hide. He wasn't that good. Yet. If the device was a woman, he'd buy it a drink. No skateboarding, the sign said. It was good to practice your moves, thought Reynardo. Keeps you limber. Just stand on the device and let it do all the killing for him. But sport, would it? Or fun?
The council speaker was on the deck, bleeding. Why was she even here? They found our base, she croaked. The council, all dead. We must surrender. No, we could still win this, said Reynardo. I have the Sky Ripper. He would be a real hero and save the day, even when all appeared to be lost.
You're a good boy, said the speaker. And then she died.
With this device, he could travel at night, so long as there are ravens set on fire. We'll always have Paris, he thought. And then he died. Fired the Sky Ripper. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. And for good measure, he played the beam around it, setting all the other nearby Imperial ships on fire too. And he watched them burn. The few remaining rebels gave a cheer. And then they stopped cheering. There was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger. Crates were falling off ship decks, upwards into the hole. And the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror as it poured into the ravenous hole. He guessed that somewhere behind that ever-widening hole were gods that had long been exiled. But it didn't really matter. Time was done for here, and soon it was. Reynardo stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learn another true thing. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly.